Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. Scott Luton here with you on Supply Chain Now. Welcome to today's live stream, folks. Today on Breaking News Now, we're focused on a topic that has generated quite a stir recently across the industry, across markets, you name it, and that is DeepSeek, a Chinese artificial intelligence company. Check out some of these headlines from the last 24 hours, just the last 24 hours. First one, quote, after DeepSeek, America and the EU are getting AI wrong, end quote. That's from The Economist. This next one's from Reuters. Quote, DeepSeek gives China's chip makers leg up in race for cheaper AI, end quote. And then this last one from New York Times. Quote, how did DeepSeek build its AI with less money, end quote. But you got to get past all those headlines and get past all the hype to get to the real truth of the matter and, of course, the important real story. And today, we're going to be spending the next half hour or so very live as we all look to get a lot more informed by demystifying what DeepSeek is and what it isn't. And to do that, we've got one of the best guests I can imagine. Basically a member of the Beatles, if the Beatles were a set of technology gurus. Get this, our guest has built several thriving companies over the last decade plus, where he's helped clients generate some $3.7 billion with data and AI. He is the author of a variety of popular courses and the great read that you've got to get somewhere right behind me. I think it's right over the shoulder right here, From Data to Profit. Our guest was one of the very first LinkedIn AI top voices, and he enjoys millions of followers around the world. In fact, you can find him educating the masses at incredible places like Davos and the Agent Force 2.0 launch. I want to welcome in Vin Vashishta, CEO and AI strategist with V Squared. Hey, Vin, how you doing?
Good. Thanks for that introduction. You're making me sound better than I deserve.
Well, you're like the Elvis of technology and AI and you name it. But Vin, and I've really enjoyed your previous appearances with us. I always learn so much more. But one of my favorite things about you, I've told you this before, two things. Number one, your sense of humor, your memes across social that really break down what you're trying to share with that sense of humor is great. But number two, what you share makes it so approachable for folks that aren't technologists. And that's really important in this ever fast moving environment, huh?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate you letting me talk to the audience.
You bet. All right, so we're going to start with the basics, and we're going to begin with, Vin, just what the heck is DeepSeek?
Well, DeepSeek's really two different things. You've got first the model. So DeepSeek R1 is the model that was released, but really what's making the big stir is DeepSeek, the startup. It's a startup out of China that is sort of what is called an AI lab, where you have companies like OpenAI, that's probably the best known AI lab, but you also have companies like Anthropic, who are building these foundational generative AI models. So what DeepSeek did was it put out a new foundational model and made some claims that, we'll talk about it in a little bit, but some of these claims were a little bit above and beyond what they could back up. But a lot of people are asking, so what's an AI lab? What's a foundational model? Really good way to think about AI labs is to think about, it's basically college for AI models, for these foundational models. You send your model to college and you've got one layer of training, which is the prerequisite layer, where it gets that horizontal breadth of knowledge that can be built on. You've got post, which is sort of your major or your grad school, where you get that vertical depth. And then you've got that product phase, which is kind of like going out and getting a job, where that's the value that gets delivered. And what DeepSeek claimed was it was able to reduce the costs. Companies like OpenAI spend hundreds of millions, sometimes even billions, on each one of their models. They claimed that they got that down to 6 million to train this model. And that's what caused a lot of the stir.
Okay. All right. So, and we're going to get into that and a couple other myths here in just a second. But where you just wrapped your response, a couple follow-up questions. First off, I love how that analogy you used, the basics and then off to college and then off to work as these models get learned up on their knowledge, right? But then you wrapped your response was with creating the stir, because the DeepSeek literally, which my 10th grade daughter will appreciate me using that term. It literally moved markets, right? Just a couple weeks ago. So why did it create such that big powerful storm?
Well, they released research saying that they had gotten the cost of model training down significantly. And what that did to markets was bring into question all of the money that companies have been spending on AI. But really, there's a little bit of conflation going on. When we talk about investment in AI, it's not all the same type of investment. These AI colleges or AI lab startups like DeepSeek and OpenAI, they're really interested in that prerequisite horizontal breadth training. That's what gets researchers really, really excited. And anything that brings
Right.
the cost of that down, definitely, that's great. That's really an interesting development. But from a business standpoint, businesses are more interested in that major, the post training and the product, going out and getting the job, doing things that create value for customers, bring value back to the business. So there was a little bit of conflation going on with, well, we've reduced the cost of training, and then investors started asking, well, does that mean NVIDIA isn't going to have as big of a market for chips? Because, oh, if we're not spending as much money on each one of these, that means we're not using as much compute, right? And that's where I say there's a little bit of conflation. Yeah, we did some things to improve one layer of the stack, but those other two layers that businesses are really interested in, not researchers really interested in, those are the
Ah,
layers that should be moving the market. And they're the ones that were sort of overlooked with researcher enthusiasm, which, to be fair, I mean, we get excited about this stuff. It's okay.
right.
But I don't think we should be tanking NVIDIA's stock price.
And it's okay to get excited. That's right.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I'm
Don't let our excitement, take down Mr. Huang's, Mr. Huang's work.
That's right. All right, so let's get into a little bit more. I appreciate. So we're kind of setting the table, folks, because if you're like me, you're trying to keep up with things. You're trying to get past the headlines and the hype, right? There's headlines I shared, which me and Vin were getting a chuckle out of. I was only laughing because Vin was laughing, right? So because Vin knows this stuff, right? He's been there and done it. He was AI before AI was cool. Y'all may have seen him on some previous appearances with us. So we're setting the table. We've talked about what it is. We've talked about the storm it created and the why there. And we've also already shared one of the myths, and that's where I want to go next. Because you've been really vocal, Vin. I've been connected with you, and I follow all your stuff that you drop every day, including those great memes. And you've been really vocal about what is reality and what is maybe some of the wishful thinking that folks are buying. So let's get to three main myths here today about DeepSeek. And the first one's one you already touched on, that what was its true training cost there?
Yeah, there have been several people that have come out. I mean, I was one of the first ones, but I'm definitely not one of the only ones who came out and started questioning the validity of that initial claim. Sort of talking about that college prerequisite level training. Did they really get it down to $6 million? And
Mm.
the deeper people dive into this story, the less likely it is that that claim is legitimate. What did they really do for $6 million? No one's entirely sure. There may be something to that claim, but the majority of what they did, I mean, the amount of money that it costs to build one of these foundational models remains the same because we have additional costs behind the scenes. We have more than one model gets trained at a time because you don't know which one of these models. You're sort of guessing. And instead of putting all your eggs in one basket, you train multiple versions to see which one's the most promising. None of those costs were included. They also did something interesting with their post training, which is, like I said, that's that majoring where you get your major in college or you do a little bit of grad school. They did
Right.
something interesting there called distillation, which, if you're familiar with alcohol, it's not the same thing. Distillation in this case means using AI to train AI. And they used OpenAI's models to train their models. So that's the first thing, is the dollar value itself that they put on the training costs is very questionable. The
Okay.
next thing is, oh, go ahead, yeah.
Well, and that's an important one, I think, because if you look at business leaders, you look at supply chain leaders, you look at analysts that are trying to predict or trying to quantify not only where we are today, but predict where we're going next. And when they see a grand bargain in terms of how they're interpreting it for similar outcomes to what's out there across industry, we're all probably chomping at the bit to find powerful outcomes at a greater discount, right? And I think your first myth here is a really important one, because to my ears at least, Vin, you still get what you pay for, which is a universal truth that's been around and proven time and time again. So, folks, stay tuned. Focus on that, because that $6 million figure to train the models, we'll probably get a lot more clarity there, as Vin is suggesting, in the weeks to come. Now, moving to this next one, Vin, you were kind of touching on the training component, and in particular, if DeepSeek was truly trained independently. Tell us more about that.
So it appears that, one of the clear signals that there is something going on here is when you ask DeepSeek for its name, does it say DeepSeek? No, it actually says it's ChatGPT. That's never a good thing. When your model claims to be the competitor's model, I think
Right.
you may have, wait a minute. The college analogy comes back. Your professor looks at you and says, I have a feeling some plagiarism might have occurred in this thesis that you just wrote me. So there's definite questions as to what they did to reduce the costs. Now, Google DeepMind's head of research and head of AI has come out actually yesterday at the Paris AI Summit and said, look, we've reviewed the research, we've reviewed the claims, and he came to the same conclusion that the rest of us have. Reviewing the
Mm.
research, there's nothing novel here. They haven't done anything that would be a new breakthrough or a novel breakthrough. That's not to say they haven't done good work. They've
Right.
done really significant work, and almost everyone believes that they are the leading AI lab in China. I mean, by leaps and bounds. They definitely have the lead, and you see that in just how many Chinese companies are rushing to partner with them. They've got 7 different auto manufacturers. They got, I think it's 6 different financial companies that they're partnering with. And that is all in the, sort of this 2-week window of hype since they crashed on the scene. So they're going to be a huge force in the Chinese AI market. But how far do the advances generalize, and what implications do the advances have? There really isn't an advance that'll disrupt the marketplace. They are explaining the commoditization cycle, though, and they're really, we're sort of getting ahead of ourselves a little bit in the commoditization cycle, but that part's legitimate too. We will definitely see a commoditization cycle. However, this isn't it.
Okay. This isn't it. Straight from the Vin. Straight from the Vin. That's one of his many nicknames, and hard-earned nicknames too. All right, so Vin, let's go there. Kind of what it's a great segue, I think, because I think the third myth that that you're kind of alluding to and speaking to there is whether or not DeepSeek is on the same level with other platforms that have been out in the market longer. Tell us more.
So their third, sort of the third myth is that this DeepSeek R1 is a similar quality model to something like an OpenAI's O1 or O3, which, they keep coming out with more models. And just yesterday, Sam Altman teased GPT-5 coming out. So we'll probably in the next, I don't know, maybe 6 months or less, see a new version of this model come out. So those are all, continuously moving yardsticks. but it doesn't appear when you run the benchmarks at a little bit more granular depth, it doesn't appear as if R1 is truly as capable as they're claiming it to be, unless you do all of the things that bump up the costs of using R1, which, remember I said that third phase of education that these AI labs do is the product, and that's really what
Right.
companies are interested in. How much does this cost to put into a product? And you have to do some things which increase the cost. We call it thinking, which, it doesn't think, but it's going to spend more time and make more requests for clarification to the model in order to get this thinking. And what the process of thinking is you have a user, they say, hey, I'd like to do this thing. And the model comes back and says, okay, well, I'm going to walk through a process. And the process isn't doing it, it is figuring out what to give back to the user. And if you look at this, it's really nice. It's transparent. You can see the model sort of talking through the problem and coming up with the solution on its own. So it's really a good layer of transparency, but it increases the cost of the product of serving that request by a significant amount. Some people estimate between 30 and sometimes even all the way out to 400
Wow.
times the cost of just serving that one request. Now multiply that one request by thousands, tens of thousands, millions. When you start scaling and you use these more complex, computationally expensive types of processes, you get much cleaner, much better, higher quality answers and functionality from the model. But you don't have that same low cost of serving the product itself.
Mm. There is still no such thing as a free lunch, Vin.
Sadly, no. We haven't figured that problem out yet.
Not yet. One of the few you haven't figured out. But it's amazing. I want to go with this next thing. I want to go a little more broadly, and that is as fast as we're moving. Right, the pace of business velocity just blows my mind, and I'm reminded of that several times a week. It feels like these days, and DeepSeek I think is a great example of that, because I think so many move so fast before they really understood to your level what reality was and what some of the what I'll call marketing hype was. That might not be the best term, but something like that. So I want to ask you this: how can our audience, the smartest audience in all of global supply chain that tune in to supply chain all the time, how can they be more informed and skeptical about future new tech, be it AI or otherwise?
Always think about these things in terms of what you need to get done. That's going to be the critical driver for assessing and evaluating every claim. I've got a 3-week rule. Anytime I see research come out, I wait 3 weeks before I really treat it seriously. And in those first 3 weeks, you're almost always going to see people like myself or others that are really in the hardcore research community just come out and say, look, I can't reproduce these claims. I can't do the same things that they're saying they can do. I have questions about the validity of some of these claims. Or in a lot of cases, in those first 3 weeks, you see a rapid improvement cycle where when it's a true breakthrough, it comes out and then a ton of us jump on the bandwagon and build these little iterative improvements, and that's when a lot of the productization happens. So give
Mm.
everything that you see about a 3-week rule. Listen to people that are building versus people that are truly influencers only. You'll see
Mm.
a lot of this in the DeepSeek story, where the people who fell for it are people that are outside of the AI research, AI engineering, applied AI community. There are people who've just never built this stuff before, so it's really easy for them to get taken in by a research paper like DeepSeek published, because there was a lot of reality in DeepSeek's paper. Like, they had significant advancements that they had put together. The problem was the most significant advancements were 2 to 3 years old, and other people had discovered them already. And that was clearly called out in the paper. It wasn't as if they were trying to hide that. They clearly called out that their main advancements were all based off of work that everyone else has done. So there was a lot of confusion created by influencers that don't truly understand the implications of the technology. So always stay focused on your domain. Like I said, it's that post training and then that what we call inference serving or the product phase.
Yep.
Focus on those. Do you see this functionality crossing the finish line in products? Do you see this getting into people's hands? And now we're going to, over the next few months, we'll see all of these other Chinese companies that are partnering with DeepSeek put the product into the real world. And that's when we'll find out if this is the real thing or not. And as I hate to say, the product part is 80% of the work. The part that DeepSeek has done, that pre and post is, I would say, significant cost, but also significant as far as technical complexity. And then once you get it to the point of product, now you're touching people. And people, they tend to do some funny things with your product that you didn't expect.
All right. Let me ask you, let me make sure I'm on the same page with you, because you know me, I'm not a technologist. I'm so glad, Vin, when all the buzz was raging, when the markets were going crazy, when you saw all the folks on the TV talking about DeepSeek, you were the first voice that said, hang on, time out. That for me started the counter movement to really get to the hard rock truth. And I really appreciate your willingness to sometimes it's not always unpopular, but sometimes it can be unpopular to put the truth out there. And you're great at that. But you said the product part, 80%. So when you say that, are you talking about after it's gone to school, or after it's gone to college, once it's getting into work and it's being used for powerful outcomes and applications in a wide variety of use cases, that's where the ultimate value will be proven? Is that the point you're making here, Vin?
That's accurate. So the first thing to realize is that that I talk about, the prerequisites, that horizontal breadth,
Yes,
that of knowledge, that's what you see in all the demos. But that's not the hardest part. That's the part that the research community kind of fell in love with, and rightly so. That's a big advancement. But what comes next, post, which is your major in college and some grad school type education, gives you that vertical depth. That's where your values really baked into the model. That's where data becomes a competitive advantage, and all of these tactical things have to happen to turn this thing that's very horizontally broad but only about 6 inches deep into something with vertical depth that can serve use cases, that can support workflows, that can do something valuable for customers or internally for your business, for your users and stakeholders. So always think about it that way. That post is really, really complex. And then productization means integrating it into the workflow, integrating it into potentially existing product lines that you already have, putting it in the hands of people and seeing what they use it for. Where do they really get value out of it? Is it reliable enough to do the things that you want to do? And what you find out really quickly when you're building is that generative AI alone, these LLMs by themselves, are not very useful. But good news, obviously, they're not the only kind of AI that's out there. We have generative AI, which gets all the attention, and it's cool. That's
right.
great. It's gotten the hype train going. But we also have models for robotics, for autonomous mobility. We have predictive prescriptive diagnostic models, what we call simulations. We have all of these other types of AI, and we have all of this traditional data, apps, cloud platforms. When you put them together, generative AI plus another type of AI or plus a more traditional platform is extremely valuable, because generative AI is good at interfacing with people, It's the best user interface we've ever come up with because it's more intuitive than anything we've ever seen. And it's also more flexible and adaptable.
Okay. All right, folks, you see why we call him the Vin around here. He is as good as I've ever seen when it comes to really taking very difficult, high-tech, not just concepts, but reality, what's out in the market, and decipher it down so that anyone can understand not the headlines, but what's really going on. And Vin, I really appreciate that. All right, one other thing to call out, the 3-week rule. You heard it from Vin. That's a great thing to put it in practice, right? Look for when new research comes out, don't instantly react. Don't instantly go to spend millions of your company budget dollars. Give it at least 3 weeks so that the folks that really know, the folks that have programmed, they've built platforms, they have deployed this high tech like Vin has, see their take first, so we can get more than just the big announcement that gets everybody excited. Okay, Vin, as we wrap here, I want to make sure that we provide the ability for our audience to connect not just with you, but your wide array of popular training courses that I'm hearing so much about, from AI product management to data and AI strategist. I'm looking at some of the things on your website here. How can folks connect with you, number one? And secondly, how can they check out your training courses that will make them a better, whether they're a technologist or just a better business leader?
Yeah, definitely. You can funnel to really finding anything about me on LinkedIn. Also, datascience.vin. That website will get you connected with the courses and with the book. The book's an excellent entry point into understanding AI from a value-centric standpoint and from a product-centric standpoint.
Love that. And it's a good one. I got it right here. Next time I see Vin at Davos, no, they're not going to invite me to Davos anytime soon, Vin. But next time I see you in Reno or Vegas, I can't wait to get you to sign up for me. I really appreciate you educating and informing us all here. And folks, just like I said, we're going to make it really easy for you. We've got Vin's LinkedIn page right here. You're one click away, and datascience.vin. How cool of a URL is that? You can check out all those resources he mentioned right there. Big thanks to Vin Vashishta, CEO and AI strategist with V Squared. Vin, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
You bet. Folks, hope you've enjoyed and learned from, most importantly, learn from this conversation with a pro that knows right here as much as I have. Hey, we got to get past the headlines and the hype, so you'll all be more in the know. That's one of our aims here. So with all that said, this is Scott Luton on behalf of the Supply Chain Now team, challenging you to do good, give forward, be the change that's needed. And we'll see you next time right back here on Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.